Before we start this video, a large thank you to Nicola, Tristan, Robert, Miles, Darty25, Nate, Mr. Zed, Caleb, Lodi432, and Russell for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to continue updating our character effect system. So this is going to be both new content and a mild refactor of one of the old systems we have, because we have all these variables here for poison. And we're going to get rid of most of these, if not all of these, in this video. This is probably going to be a two-parter, because we're also going to update some other effects too. But I digress, let's get into it. Let's make a header called tick effects. You can alternatively call this timed effects if you prefer, because they're going to trigger at a tick, meaning like every second or two in game if you have one active. Think of stuff like poison buildup and poison over time, etc. Let's make a serializable field for a list of character effects. And we can call this again tick effects or timed effects or effects over time, whatever you want to call it, whatever makes it easier for you to remember what this does. Alright, right below that, I'm going to make another serializable field for a float. I'm going to call it effect tick timer. Going to initialize it at 0. Now, let's go down a little bit, and we can make an update function here. And then we can say effect tick timer is equal to effect tick timer plus time dot delta time. So every second is going to go up 1. And then we're going to say if the effect tick timer is greater or equal to 1, we're going to reset it back to 0 and then process all of our timed effects. And right now we can also call process weapon buffs, and this basically checks for any weapons that we're holding that have active buffs. And now that will actually deteriorate them over time or make them go down with time. So what we did in the last video should now be working as an effect over time effectively. Now, the weapon buffs are separate because they're kind of a thing that's on the weapons themselves, not just the character, which is why I put them there. You can also include them in the timed effects if you wanted to, but I'm going to keep them as it is. I'm going to make another virtual void called handle all timed effects, and I'm going to copy and paste the stuff from update into this, because then we can call this in the player manager to kind of stay in the same convention. You can keep it on update if you want. I'm going to make a for loop, and we're going to iterate through all the timed effects we have, and we're just going to check it by the count, basically. And then we're going to say for I, int is equal to I, equals timedeffects.count minus 1. Then we're going to say if I is greater than the length, or if I is greater than minus 1, sorry, we're going to say I minus minus. And this is just going to basically iterate through each effect we have in the timed effects. And then we're going to say timed effects I dot process effect, or tick effect, whatever you want to call it. And this is just basically going to go through all the effects, and it's going to activate or process each timed effect we have. All right, so let's go into the game here now and create a new C# script. And I'm going to call this poison buildup or poison buildup effect. And we can actually start migrating the logic and also adding more to this, because now that it's its own effect, we have a lot more freedom. And I'll get into that in just a bit on why this is infinitely better and infinitely easier to understand. Let's go to the character manager, and let's actually make a virtual update, protected virtual void. And let's go to the player manager after that, and the AI character manager, and let's basically make it derived from this update. And we're going to say character effects manager dot process. What did I call this actually? Handle timed effects, I believe I call it. Let me double check. Yes, handle all timed effects. I'm actually going to change the name to that to something I like a little bit more now I'm thinking about it. Just being picky here. We're going to change handle to process. You know how I am with naming conventions by this point in time. I have a very set of rules, I guess you could say, I like to follow to keep everything kind of the same. So let's go to player manager, and we have a void update. This is definitely super old, because now I never type void, I would say private. Let's change that to a protected override, and let's call base.update on that, which means it will use this update plus the logic from the class it inherits from. And then let's go over to the AI character manager, and let's do the same. That way we have it so both the AI and the character are affected by the timed effects. And by that I mean they're both going to just check every tick to see if there's any effects to process. So you'll see it's underlined here with green. That means we need to basically say that this is either an override or not. So I'm going to change the start to override to. I don't think we have that. So I'm going to make a base start virtual function on the character manager. And I'm going to call base.start and base.update. This is just so in the future when we do use start, or if we ever do, I believe we will at some point, I'm sure, we can basically just use the base's start, much like we use the awake. All right, so public or protected virtual start. Oh, I also have a very important announcement at the end of this video, guys. So stick around for the end. When the end fade out screen happens, I want to talk about something that's really important for the series. All right, so start. We're good. And over here, let's just say base.start. You guys know what's going on by now. I don't even have to tell you, I'm sure. All right, so let's save it, and let's go back into the script here, poison buildup effect. Let's eradicate the start and update function. Let's make this derived from character effect, and let's give it our namespace. And I'm going to take a sip of tea. Okay, so let's say override process effect, and then we can kind of give this a create asset menu so we can make it inside of our project. Let's say menu name is equal to character effects / I'm just going to call it poison buildup. All right, looks good. I'm going to delete the base.process effect because this is going to have its own logic entirely. Let's make 3 variables first. The first one is serializable field for a float. We'll call it poison buildup amount. We could say before resistances, or actually that's a bit too wordy. I'll just call it base poison buildup amount. If you're wondering why I'm putting before resistances, is because we're going to make this basically adjusted for how much you actually resist. Because I don't know if you recall, but a very long time ago, we gave our armor classes a poison resistance value. We're going to actually utilize that now. So if your armor has high poison resistance, it can potentially make you immune to poison. Next, we're going to make a float for poison amount equals 100. And this is just, I will say, the default amount of time you're poisoned. I'm going to add some comments here to keep this clean for you guys too. So the first one, the amount of poison buildup given before our resistances are calculated. So I'm also going to say per game tick. So let's say you have 7 poison buildup. That's going to give you 7 per tick until you get to 100. And if you get to 100, then you'll be poisoned. And then when you're poisoned, this is the amount you're poisoned for. So the amount of poison time the character receives if they are fully poisoned. So 100 right now would be 100 game ticks. Or I like to think of it as 100%, but 100 game ticks is more accurate for sure. Then lastly, an integer for the poison damage per tick. So if you successfully proc the poison, then this is how much damage the character is going to take per game tick that they are poisoned. So it's 100 ticks of game time. That will be times 5. That will be equivalent to 500 points of damage. So I'm going to say the amount of damage taken from the poison if it is built up to 100%. I hope that's clear. I'm sure it is. Okay, so down here now in the process effect, let's start by writing some logic. First, we're going to make a float for poison buildup. Let's call it final poison buildup because this is the poison buildup you'll receive after your resistances have been calculated. So we have the base poison buildup amount, which is before your resistances, and now we have the final poison buildup, which is after your resistances have been calculated. So let's make a comment up here, and we're going to say poison buildup after we factor in our player's resistances. So let's go and check our equipment item. I'm just going to look up a random one here. Yes, let's go to body equipment, and you'll see that derives from equipment. And then here you see we have a poison resistance float. Cool. I don't think we use this. It's just there. So let's check it out. If we do use it, it's definitely in our character stats manager. And if we don't use it, we're going to activate that right now. So let's just go below here and see. Let's say if, and we're going to check for our character stats manager poison resistance. So let's just see if we got anything happening there. And we probably don't. I'm going to take a sip of tea also. All right, so no, we don't. So let's go to our character stats manager and let's plug this in. So wherever you want, make a header for poison. I'm just going to make mine called resistances actually, not poison, because you can also have frost resistance wherever else you have going on. I'm going to say public float poison resistance, and then I'm going to find where we actually initialize our armor, so I can basically plug this in as well. And it's on our player equipment manager. So let's go there. Scroll down. And then when we've arrived at it, let's take a look here what's going on. So you can see here that we're plugging in our physical defense right here. And ideally you'd think let's put the poison resistance right here as well. But no, you don't want to do that. Because basically we want to first declare a variable up here for the poison resistance. So let's call float poison resistance is equal to 0. We initialize it as 0 because every time we equip armor, it has to reset to 0 and check Otherwise, you'll just keep stacking poison resistance every time you unequip and re-equip an item. So then we're going to say basically if our helmet is not null, we say poison resistance plus equal, which means poison resistance is equal to poison resistance plus. And then we check for our helmet equipment and say dot poison resistance. And that's it. And then we do the same thing for the body, legs, hands. You get it. Every piece of equipment that you got. If you have some other equipment too, shoulders, whatever you got going on, just add the same thing in here as well. And I am going to take a sip of tea again. All right, once you have that done, I still don't, so just give me a second because I'm renaming it. We want to go to the very bottom of this chain, outside all the if statements. We want to then take the total amount of poison resistance we have, which is, again, the equivalent to each piece of equipment we have added up together. So if we have none, it'll be 0. And then we set our player stats dot poison resistance to that number. So it's very simple. So I'm just going to put that right at the top there, float poison resistance equals 0. And down at the bottom here, player.playerstatsmanager.poison resistance is equal to the poison resistance. And this is the exact same if you have frost or whatever kind of curse buildup you have, it's all identical. So that's why I'm only doing poison. If you guys would like me to cover frost or curse buildup, I can do that as well. Anyway, back to the buildup effect. We're going to say if the character.characterstatsmanager.poison resistance is greater than 0, then we need to know that we're actually deducting some of this buildup. So first we got to check to make sure it's not over 100. Because if it's 100 or more, then we know our final poison buildup is going to result in 0. That's it. You can even just say return here because we initialized it at 0. So you could say if the poison resistance is greater or equal to 100, just return. But I'm just going to say final poison buildup, or you could say return 0 if you want to make it a float. I'm going to say final poison buildup is equal to 0. And if our character has 100 or more poison buildup, then they are immune. Just making a comment here so it's very clear. Now, if they're not over 100 or 100, then we need to do some math to see how much we're shaving off because of our resistance. So this is very simple. We're going to say, let's make a variable here for the resistance that we're going to take off. So I'll make a float for resistance percentage, rather. And that's equal to, this is the same way we calculate our armor resistances. I'm sure a few of you are going to remember this, or probably already know it. We're going to say it's equal to character.characterstatsmanager dot poison resistance divided by 100. And that's the percentage we're going to resist. And then we say our final poison buildup is equal to, and then we're going to say base poison buildup amount minus, and then we say base poison buildup amount times the resistance percentage. And that's it. So if your poison resistance is 22, you're going to basically shave off 22% of 7. And that's really all there is to it. It's pretty simple. So let's jump over now again here to the character effects manager. And let's delete the default poison amount. We're going to delete a lot of stuff here, so just bear with me. And then let's delete the poison timer. Don't need that anymore. It's going to be handling the effects. Let's delete the poison damage. That's also on the effects. Let's delete the timer. Don't need that anymore either. Let's just take the build-up and the amount and is poisoned. Let's copy that and delete it from here and put it on the character stats manager because that belongs on the character stats manager, really, because this is where all things that are stats are affecting your character, and I do consider poison build-up and poison a stat. Let's make a header for poison. Let's paste those right there, just like that. All right, now back on the poison build effect. Let's just go over here right below where we calculate the resistance. Let's say character.characterStatManager.poison buildup is equal to, or plus equal to rather, our final poison buildup. So every tick, we're going to add more buildup on after we do these calculations. Every tick, the character is sitting in a poison zone, really. So I'll make it very known here. Each tick, we add the buildup amount to the character's overall buildup. That's pretty simple. Then we can say if character.characterStatsManager.is poisoned, then we want to say character.characterEffectManager. We're going to say over here, let's change this to public because I can't add anything. Timed effects. I've called it timed effects. You might have called it tick effects, whatever you choose to call it. Character.character effects manager.timed effects.remove this. So if we are poisoned, we want to get rid of this effect so it's not sitting there after we've been poisoned, because this is just a buildup effect. It's not the poison effect itself. So we're going to say if the character is already poisoned, remove all possible or all poison buildup effects. Now you can have a buildup effect from being hit by a poison weapon or from standing in a swamp or whatever. It can be built up in many different ways. So right below that, we're going to say if character stats manager dot poison buildup is greater than 0 and it's less than 100. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. There we go. Less than 100. Then we want to do some logic. We're going to start by saying character.character effects manager. Whoops. Dot character stats manager is what I meant. Then we're going to say dot poison buildup is equal to plus equal to, or minus equal to, 1. Because we want to say that every tick that the character is or does have poison buildup, we also want to subtract 1. You know how when you leave a swamp in Dark Souls, the poison buildup will slowly go down? Well, this is the effect of that, really. And lastly, right below this, we need to know what happens if it does get to 100, which would make the character poisoned. So let's say if character.character stats manager.poison buildup is greater or equal to 100, then obviously we want to poison the character. So what happens when the character gets poisoned? Well, let's make a comment here and say poison the character, and then let's add some logic. Alright, so if the character is poisoned, I'm actually going to put the comment up here, so it's staying in line with our conventions here. If our buildup is 100 or more, we poison the character. And the first thing we want to do is obviously declare that the character is poisoned and reset the buildup to 0, because we don't want to have the character have just buildup that just lingers after the poison wears off and then resets the whole process. So we're going to say character.character stats manager.is poison equals true. Character.character stats manager.poison buildup or poison amount is equal to the poison amount we have up there. And then let's make our buildup 0. So the poison amount again is the higher this is, the longer your character is going to be poisoned. So 100 is going to be 100 game ticks. 200 game ticks, 10 game ticks. You can make some poison buildup more dangerous than others, basically. And then set the poison buildup to 0. So then we're going to say we want to make a poison effect, which we don't have made yet. And we're going to make this script in this video, but really set it up and finalize it in the next video. So let's do that right now so you can just see the layout of what I have planned. Let's make a C# script. We can call it poisoned effect. And I am going to take a sip of tea. Alright, let's come inside this, get rid of start and update, drop in our namespace, and make this derived from a character effect. And for now, let's just leave it as that. If you want to, you can do your override for your process effect. So we can say your override process effect. There we go, and delete this. Now let's go and jump back over to our poison build effect. Alright, so we have a poison effect. Poison effect. Now, I'm going to tell you something very important about scriptable objects that you probably already know because I'm pretty sure I've said it before. You never, and I repeat, never want to use the original for things that will have its variables edited. For example, on the poison buildup effect and the poison effect, the poison buildup amount is going to go down over time. The basically how long it lasts goes down over time. The numbers change depending on what you're doing. So if you don't clone it, let's say if you use the original, anybody who has the poison buildup effect will all share the exact same values. So if yours is down to 50% or 50% buildup, everybody who has buildup in the scene will receive 50% buildup. Basically, it's just one master file that shares everything throughout the scene. That's why we always want to instantiate a copy of the original, but make it a unique instantiation for this specific character. I cannot stress enough how important that is. So because of this, we need to make a manager to store all of our original effects, which we will call the world effect manager. And if you're doing multiplayer right now, that also has a giant bonus of being able to get all the effects from one place, and you can assign them an integer number. Much like you have an item database, you can make an effect database. But for now, we're going to keep it very simple and just call it the world effect manager. and we're just going to have copies of all of our effects in there that we can just instantiate directly from. Okay, so let's make an empty game object, reset as transform, make a script. I'm going to call mine world character effects manager. You can call it whatever you want as long as you know what it does. This again is just going to house all of the potential effects your character could encounter that need to be instantiated into the scene from copies or from the originals. So I'm going to make a public static world character effects manager variable and call it instance. This is just going to be the only version of this in the scene. So we're going to say if instance is equal to null, instance equals this. If instance is not null, this already exists in the scene. Our singleton does, so destroy this game object. So this makes it so you can never have more than one of these things in the scene. It's important because when we use a public static, we can just basically reference this script from anywhere, which makes it very easy to get our effects. So I'll start by making a public poison buildup and public poisoned effects variables. And let's put in our namespace so Unity's not complaining and we can actually call these variables properly. And now, because of this, we can basically instantiate a copy of these scriptable objects by using this script. So very simple, very straightforward. Now let's go back, and I forgot to put my poison effect, which is why I made this in the first place. Whoops. So we're going to say public poisoned effect. All well and good. Come back to the poison buildup script, and then we can say poison effect equals instantiate world character effects manager dot instance dot poison effect. Okay. And now you can see why this effect system is so versatile and modular, because if you have one poison that's more dangerous than another, let's say a swamp is super deadly, we put a public int poison damage variable on the poison effect. We're going to say it's 1 defaultly. And now over here on the poison buildup, you can make each poison buildup have different amounts of deadly poison. So we'll say poison effect dot poison damage is equal to our poison damage per tick. So this gives you the ability to make each poison different and unique in its own way. It can last longer. It can go by quick. It can be quick and deadly. It can be short and dragged out. So this makes the system so much more, infinitely more modular. Then we say character effects manager timed effects add the poison effect. All right, that's basically it for this video. But now let's fix some errors because we've kind of destroyed a lot of the old systems. And before we move on, let's just say character effects manager timed effects remove this to remove the build-up effect. Now we're going to finalize this in the next video, and we're also going to add some more. We're going to basically refactor, I'm going to say, quote unquote, some other systems, specifically the damage system, to make it a lot more cool. But before we go, let's actually fix these errors. So you can see here, this is giving us an error because it's trying to look for something on the player effects manager that doesn't exist. Just replace player effects manager with player stat manager, and you're good to go. We're also going to delete some functions that basically have no use anymore, specifically on the player effects manager or character effects manager regarding poison, because now that we're handling it through an effect, we don't need to give it its own functionality on the script, the character effects manager. Right here, this is happening because we're, again, looking for the character effects manager when we should be looking for the character stats manager. So, whoops, what am I doing right now? Sorry. You don't want to do that. You want to change character effects manager right here to character stats manager. That's it. And do the same thing for each of the variables on the script, because this looks like it's the trigger entry for a poison area, a poison buildup area. Yeah, so we're probably going to change this script in the future too, but for now I'm just going to do this to get rid of the errors. We might adjust this a little bit, more than likely. I'm going to take a sip of tea again. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's save that. Over here again, same story. You can delete the poison buildup amount from the player status manager because we assign that again from the effect. We don't need that. We can delete the entire handle poison buildup function and handle is poison effect and handle buildup effects. This is all on the character effects manager, by the way. We don't need those anymore. Let's save that. Still going to get some more errors. Delete the handle poison buildup and handle poison effects on the player effects manager. Don't need that anymore. Save that. And then delete the AI character effects manager handle buildup effects. Don't need that either. It's on fixed update. And then lastly, I think this might be the last error. Yeah, player effects handle all build effects on fixed update. Delete that as well. Don't need that anymore. Let's just see. Might have one more or two more. Let's see. Nope. Okay, we're good. So There we go, that's fine. Now, in the next video, we're going to make the poisoned effect, and we're going to make it so it's all working with our new handle effects over time system. And we're also going to go and make some adjustments to the way we take damage to make the damage effects way more modular and cool. Now, the announcement I was talking about. So, this is very important. As you guys know, I'm working on multiplayer for a very long time on Nephilim, and it's in a state now where it's fully functional, really fun to play, and I have a very good understanding of how to do everything in multiplayer. Now, the Dark Souls series, it can definitely be adjusted for multiplayer, but it will need a long refactor video, probably a few hours just to basically change the way a few things work. I'm not going to get into why and how, but it is definitely doable, and I'm going to do that. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do something that's very, very massive. I've learned a lot while making this series, obviously with you guys, because as I was making the Dark Souls in Unity tutorial series, I was actually programming my own game. And that's why I wanted to start the series, because I wanted to showcase what I've learned. And like you guys, I am also a student over a long period of time, so I have learned a whole lot of stuff since I've started this series. And the series in itself is fantastic. I still like the way I've set up a lot of the systems, but obviously as you program, you get better and better and better. And I've learned a lot making Nephilim, and I can make these systems so much better. But I'm not going to slash the Dark Souls series. I'm going to finish it, obviously, because we're nearing the end of complete functionality for a very simple Souls prototype. But what I'm going to do very soon is I'm going to release a remastered version of the series without editing this one at all. I'm going to make sure that we finalize this one first. And I'm going to go through the entire series again, but base my code off of Nephilim. So I'll include Elden Ring mechanics, jumping, attacking, and stuff like that, spirit summoning, etc., etc. But the whole series will start with multiplayer from the very beginning, and it will be essentially, since I've already done everything in Nephilim, I can just kind of like piece by piece just go through my functionality and release it video by video. I already know what to type, everything's already done, so I just kind of have to segment it into a well-documented series. Now, the differences in that series and this series will be, see, the Dark Souls series is just going to show you guys functionality. I just lay out the functionality and I program it for you guys, which is why, for example, when I did damage systems, I only did physical and fire. I didn't include lightning and darkness because it's the exact same function. And when I did UI, I did an example of a few, and then I didn't do everything because, again, it is the exact same functionality. My point is, in this series, I just wanted to give you guys the tools on how to do this on your own. I showed you 1 to 2 examples of the functionality, and anything that was identical, I didn't go over and do again because there was no point in my mind. Because if you know how to do one, you can do all. But in this other series, it's going to be how to construct a game, start to finish, every small, minute detail. So the episodes will be a lot longer, and the series itself will be a lot more detailed. And I'm really going to try to dive in and explain everything that I do in minute detail. I've been doing that a lot in the Souls series, but I know I didn't in the very beginning. So this next series is going to be really massive. If you guys are interested in that, I would like to hear your thoughts about it in the comment. I'd love to start a discussion about this because I am pretty excited to do it. But I can't stress enough, I'm not abandoning the Souls series, not at all. I'm going to see this through to completion. And we're going to get around to the area soon where really all we're going to do is make some polish videos. So I expect to actually just have a functioning Souls demo in the very near future where we run through a makeshift level, we fight some enemies, we kill a boss, and then we level up. And on the way, we showcase archery, our melee combat, and our spell combat. And we just look for some stuff really to polish and just kind of make the game more of a game. Because as it stands now, the Souls series does have most of the functionality in place. It's almost all done, really. We just have to polish it a lot. We have to find things that we don't like and kind of add on to it. So I'm rambling at this point. You guys get the point. I just wanted to address that new series in the future and get your thoughts on it. As always, guys, I hope you have a lovely week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you all for being here all the time. I love making these videos, talking to you guys, and going through this process. A special thank you to my patrons, and if you guys made it this far, I would greatly appreciate a like and a comment because it does help with the video series more than you will ever know. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the next video.